Enra na Abuja na Pobeka chair say as energy minister no we expected 3,000 containers bia previous government no e ship ba inside aye ECG for there. Na sa 3,000 containers no ne nhwehwemu e kire mu say as of enra ne de emu 1,300 ayera. Nsenwe a energy minister Abuja na Pobaba bonte be kan ye no nkofo bebre e pointed fingers at Afenyo Markin a mo chemu say Afenyo Markin in containers na yira no ehu bi ntom nkonko so Afenyo Markin we nsema Ghanaians kanya botere tena say neji wakonya na mencheche nsem ni mu emfa nkyere won enra na energy minister babonte a wo chemu say previous government no shipping in 3,000 containers a ECG for the HSM boys na nneoma mo de be ECG adwuma no enegum but as of enra no information a all gathering in bibia e kire mu say out of that 3,000 containers na previous government no antimi an clear no emu 1,300 aira oba kwenti be kan san sem we no enra anase ende no obeye interview a wo che nkwa fa so a wo hu sa containers 1,300 no esa kire mu say wasan hu say container ni bi e wo baabi ama police for aye nhwehwemu anase ade akire akwache sa container na mo ye nhwehwemu ahwe nipa kora container na e kon ho but enye hu nipa kora no a lot of Ghanaians kasa information am rechi e kire mu say Afenyo Markin ho bon e containers na ayera no hu bi videos na mebo akire mo no bo se nipa na kire mu say nipa ba ko a we prime suspect wo some nkwehwe no Afenyo Markin because Afenyo Markin once upon a time no ye ECG chairman and as we board chairman wo ECG honum it is a containers na ayera no hu bon container no hu bi nti yenko so Afenyo Markin na ombra be kire be a containers 1,300 no ewo before says ansem we nyina be koso no Afenyo Markin ankasa ba abonti be gi etum nsem bia energy minister be kan sometime ago a wo chemu say container bia ECG for kraba ye o man timi an clear container na emum obi nya ho eto container no fofofo esa atwa no ho ton container ne ma ECG for esa to container no o kan nsem we na Afenyo Markin e ba abonti be gi nsem a energy minister kan to mu say nsem energy minister e ka no e no kreto do ntro bia nim na kire say wonim sense anuma bi say e koso ECG ho Afenyo Markin ankasa gi to mu say wo ye adwuma e wo ECG ho pen na wonim corruption a e koso ECG ho ntiama a lot of Ghanaians kasa mo chemu say containers 1,300 atimi ayera efri Ghana port wo pa dia ene mo mfa Afenyo Markin without wasting my time no yentie nsema energy minister e kan nde e kwan e fa so hu say containers 1,300 ayera ene de omkochi no baabi omo ye ho investigation ene nsema obi kotena eye TV so wo chemu say Afenyo Markin ehu bon nsem ni mu nti yemfre no asay malikbasintale TV so mo homo de subscribe share no binya video ni bi enhwe.
We're having a conversation about the presser which you held yesterday, and you talked about the missing containers, 1,328, and we're all wondering how those containers got missing. But before you even throw some more light on that, help us reconcile these figures. Now, there was an interview granted the press sometime in January where you talked about the fact that you had been to the ports and there were 2,500 containers. You found 2,500 containers there. And then also subsequently, Collins was just telling me that in Parliament, you mentioned the 3,000 as a follow-up question by one of your colleagues in Parliament, and you said there were 3,000 containers at the port. And now we're told 1,328 is missing. Help us reconcile and tidy up these figures so that we're all on the same page, sir.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to you. This Collins on the program.
Yes, Collins is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good morning. Good morning.
Morning, my brother.
Okay, so what happened is that during the transition, as part of stock taking, the MPP side of the transition indicated that they had about 3,000 containers stuck at the ports, and they were struggling to clear those containers. So that is it. At the transition, they gave us 3,000.
Okay.
Then on assumption of office, I visited the port myself to see for myself the extent of the situation. And when we went to the port, ECG indicated they contracted some private companies to clear their containers. And they had cleared about 500, there was about 2,500. So I felt a bit alarmed. 8,000 figure, 2,500 figure. So I said, look, let's set up a committee. Let the committee investigate one, circumstances leading to those containers being held at the port. Because we don't even have to have 100 containers stuck at the port, not even 100. Two, what we can do about the demurrage, which was accumulating and was about 1.5 billion cedis at the time. And then three, and more importantly, how can we clear these containers? And then four, any other related matters with respect to procurement. So there was a 3,000 figure, there was a 2,500 figure. And then when the committee started this work, officially, ECG gave them a figure of about 2,490 thereabout, so about 2,500. And so the committee itself decided that they would do a stock taking of the containers so that they can verify the veracity or otherwise of ECG's claims. Because bear in mind, there was at 3,000, 2,500, and now on paper about 2,490. When they did the actual stock taking, they submitted the report to me yesterday, and the committee chairman was categorical that about 1,300 containers could not be accounted for. On ECG's official document, those containers were supposed to be at the port, but when they went to the port to verify, more than 1,300 containers were missing and could not be accounted for. So that is what I have to say to you.
So this 1,328 is out of the 2,490, supposedly.
Exactly so. Exactly so.
Wow, 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 wow. Collins is just telling us that there was no way these containers could have left the port without the tacit approval of ECG. Do you agree with him?
Well, that's possible. So where are the containers? It's also possible that there's some collusion. In fact, what alarmed me and I got national security to intervene, we had two situations where ECG containers were intercepted by some police officials, and they're even investigating.
When was this?
This should be about a month ago.
Where?
This should be about a month ago.
Where were these
around
containers?
The area. Around the Pong area.
Around the Pong area, okay.
The Pong area.
Okay.
And so when they intercepted them, about 10 or so of them, national security got involved. And so national security coordinator, with my approval, thought that they should secure all the containers so that we don't have these challenges. Because sometimes, even not to doubt anybody, even when people claim that they are helping ECG clear the containers, you never know where they will end. But the record keeping is so bad, there's so much collusion. And so what we have to do now is to launch a criminal investigation into this matter. And I think that, like Colin says, we should be able to trace, to know where the containers are. Because, for instance, if you have 2,490, then it means you ordered those containers. It means a bill of lading were produced. It means that the containers went to a certain port or a certain container terminal. It means that that container terminal received the container. Somebody took custody of the containers. If the containers were leaving, they could only leave through proper documentation. A clearing agent or company would have cleared those containers. ECG also has warehouses. Somebody should have received those containers. And so if we check the records, we should be able to trace where these containers ended, and then whoever or whichever company is liable will be held responsible. The only way to unravel this is to get the state agencies to conduct a proper criminal investigation into this matter.
Did the report which you sanctioned the committee to produce, did this state, for instance, when the last container moved out of the port?
In fact, what happened was that when they started suspecting it, I wrote a letter to freeze everything. Because let me be frank with you, even those companies, private companies, ECG contracted to clear the containers, they are under investigation. So during the investigation process, we suspended all that in order to get facts about the matter, so that you are sure that people do not move it even as the investigations are ongoing.
College, you want to ask? No, feel free. You want to ask me a question?
John.
Yes.
Yes, my brother. Did the committee speak to any of the former MDs of ECG in their work?
Yes, according to them, they spoke to some of the former MDs. They spoke to former employees, and they depended on official record. I want to ask permission from the president and publish the report. I mean, all of us want to do the right thing, and I do not want to jump into conclusion now. Let's get to the bottom of the matter. That clearly the committee has reported that over 1,300 containers cannot be accounted for. We must trace those containers and determine and find the whereabouts of those containers. That is paramount.
Let me correct this wrong impression. You see, in our language, there's a saying that sometimes the very person to be the first to shout thief, thief, thief is likely the thief. And that is the impression I see being created around this table.
You mean the one who say he is
brother, for all you know, he's the #1 culprit. And I'll explain why. The minister has not said anywhere prior to this report that he had done an auditing of the claimed 3,000 containers that was left behind by the MPP, management of ECG. No. What the minister told the good people of this country, and mind you, Honorable John Ghanapo is one of the meticulous appointees you can find in this government who knows his onions, especially when dealing with the energy sector. He informed the good people of this country that based on the report that he had received from the ECG, they had in excess of 3,000 containers that they were unable to clear at the ports. Being a meticulous appointee of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, he directed an audit of the claimed 3,000 containers that had been left. That should tell you that he was simply not ready to accept the handing over notes, declaration of 3,000. He needed to actually audit those containers to be sure that indeed 3,000 had been left.
That's how he arrived at.
Yes, so it is not as if the Honorable John Ghanapo went to the port and counted 3,000 containers. He himself had to cross-check through an audit of the committee he set up to go and audit to be sure that what the handing over notes is communicating is actually what is the fact. So he is equally shocked that based on the handed over notes, they can justify indeed that 3,000 3,000 containers were supposed to be at the port. But they have counted only about 1,000 something, and they cannot account for 1,300. And remember, the ports were not left ajar. When the NDC took power, we protected the ports. So if there's any flying away of containers, the flying away of containers took place before President John Dramani Mahama was handed over power to. These are the facts. And that is why we are interested in finding out where those containers went to. Remember, at the time, the chairman of the ECG board, can you allow me to land? The chairman of the ECG board was the same Afenyo Markin. Afenyo Markin. He's just the immediate past board chairman of the ECG. So they need, absolutely, they need to know. We need to be inviting them to tell us where that 1,300 containers went to. So you cannot, at the comfort of your party office, suddenly start shouting thief, 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 when in actual sense you are the #1 culprit and suspect. So let us not entertain that. But Roland, to the substantive issues. You see, we must appreciate the rot that is happening at the ECG and know that it falls in line with the concerns His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama raised in his first State of the Nation address. Remember, he told us that many of our SOC, state-owned enterprises, were indebted, SOEs, and many of them were collapsing, largely because of reckless management. Today, what has happened at the ports, and the fact that even ECG, imagine the rot, Solo, ECG could not even get money to clear the containers, yet decided to engage 2 other companies and pre-financed one of them to continue with the clearing of something that they claimed that they didn't have money to clear. And so that is the kind of way this country was handled. Look at every state institution. It was run down. It was almost as if this country an illegal mining site for NPP appointees to mine our resources away.
But
so it was not just in our bushes
so
and forests.
Investigations would have to be.
They were mining as far as the public
is or not. I mean.
No, but that's the point I'm making. But you see, Ghanaians must be hopeful that change has come. You see, if you monitor President Mahama clearly and closely, you would know that President Mahama understands that his success as president will not come from the 60 ministers that he has appointed. He appreciates that his success as a president would come from the many civil state-owned enterprises out there. That is why he seemed to be interested, and that is why he, for the first time, he decided to have an engagement with them, and also indicated his commitment to empowering the state interest governance authority, SIGA, to ensure that performance contracts are signed with managers of this state-owned enterprise. Roland is important. So clearly, President Mahama appreciated that a chunk of the rot happened using the state-owned enterprises. And the time has come for us to reverse that trend. Okay. But the site, Ghanaians should not forget that the #1 culprit in running down our state institutions is the New Patriotic Party and their assigns. We are trying to fix the rot. And we would not be branded as people being responsible for the missing of the coup.
We know the elections ended December 7.
Yes.
Then